Donnie and Dolly. The team is supported by ableauctions.ca. Closing your business? We can help.
It is Friday, 11 a.m. on a Friday, and all of our guests today, including Rick Ball, standing by. He's in Vancouver, back in Vancouver. Brought to you by the Bayside Oceanfront Resort. Escape to the Bayside Oceanfront, the ideal mid-island destination for a relaxing weekend getaway. Enjoy comfortable accommodations, ocean views, and exceptional service. Book your stay at BaysideResortParksville.com. Canucks and the at one time arch rival Chicago Blackhawks Saturday at Rogers Arena. The Hawks 31st in the National Hockey League, losing to the 32nd place team San Jose yesterday down in California by a score of, was it 4-2? Yeah, 4-2. Rick Ball joins us now, voice of the Chicago Blackhawks, our old friend from the Chicago Sports Network. Thanks for doing this, sir. How are you?
I'm terrific. Good to see you guys.
How's life in Chicago, Rick?
It's been fantastic. It's a great city, and I always love going there. Many, many times as a visiting broadcaster, living there has only exceeded my expectations. So, it's only been, 5 months now, 6 months since I've been there. So exploring, and there's so many things to offer. Great restaurants, some of the world's best steakhouses, Original Six franchise, team that's still in a rebuilding mode. But we were talking about this last night on the broadcast. I was working with Tony Granato because Darren Pang was off to do a national game. And I'm so amazed at the crowds they keep getting at United Center. This is a club that's been, near the bottom of the standings for the last number of seasons. People, I think, understand the process that they're rebuilding. They've got a ton of young players, and yet they're still getting 19,000 plus a game, And by contrast, you have the San Jose Sharks going through the same process. I don't know if there were 8,000 people in the building last night. So it really is a testament to how many great fans there are in Chicago.
Maybe the answer to this is 3 Stanley Cups, Rick, fairly recently. But I remember a time when, not that long ago, when the Hawks weren't playing all that well, had a long stretch of losing seasons, and that arena was half empty. It's not like it is today. What's the difference?
That's a great point. I think the winning, having those 3 cups in 6 years certainly helped in building an even stronger fan base. There were a lot of issues back then. The games weren't on local television back in those days. I was talking sort of in the early 2000s. I remember when I first started doing NHL games going in there, and you're right, the building was half full. So they've done a really good job in terms of, as an organization, building up their fan base. They worked very hard to get that building as full as possible, if not sold out. The fans, I think they also see the process here and understand what's going on. They've got a player who's a big draw on Connor Bedard. So those factors all kind of work together to generate interest in a team that has not been winning that much this season or for the last few. So, but the future's bright. Like at last night's game, even though they lost to San Jose, there were 10 players on the roster for the Hawks, 23 years old or younger, including 2 19-year-olds, and Connor Bedard and Artem Levshunov. And they've got some great prospects in the pipeline. They have 4 more first-round draft picks in the next couple of seasons, a couple of drafts. So, they're doing what a lot of people want to see a team do when they're going from one phase in their sort of arc as a franchise into another. And that's, pile up a bunch of prospects and draft picks. And they have, I think, $32 million in cap space projected for next year on top of that. And they can be a player in the free agent market as well. So we'll see how it all plays out over the next while. But I think the future is very bright for this team. It's going to take a while for all these guys to blossom into bona fide National Hockey League players, but especially on the blue line, I think, if half of the prospects they have pan out, they're set for the next decade in terms of defensemen, and that's a great place to start. And now they've added a goalie in Spencer Knight,
right?
At the, with that Seth Jones trade that could wind up being your goalie of the future for the next decade too. So, if you believe in building from the back end out, they're in a pretty good spot right now.
Rick, tell us about Connor Bedard's second NHL season. We saw the 10-minute misconduct last night. His team's not winning. I made this point in an earlier segment that, it goes back to Regina. They didn't win there for 2 seasons as well. Just what sense of frustration do you get from him?
Yeah, I can feel it. That was I don't know what he said, but if you looked at, because we had a shot of him on the bench, and there was obviously a little conversation with the referee, but it was not animated. It was not heated. To take a marquee player out of the game in the first showdown between him and Macklin Celebrini in their NHL careers, two teams at the bottom of the standings, there was actually some interest in that game, and toss them out for the final 10 minutes in a 1-goal game. You got to have, I don't know. I don't like picking on officials. It's a hard job, and I get it, but have a feel for the moment. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I understand the guy slamming his stick and throwing a temper tantrum, but if he just muttered under his breath something he didn't like, give me a break. So I didn't like that at all. I thought it was pretty stupid. What's he going to say? He's a 19-year-old kid. He was quite measured in his comments after the game. But, I'm guessing there's a little frustration. Like sometimes it looks like he's not having a ton of fun, but he's going to be a great player for a long time. So, I think he has to understand it's tough when you're that young. You don't really understand sometimes you sort of see where you are in the moment and it feels like you're never going to get out of it. He will. And he's having a pretty decent season. It's slowed down a little bit the last couple of weeks, but I think Nathan McKinnon made a comment after the Avalanche game. He goes, "I wish I would have had that many points when I was a teenager." You look at his numbers when he came in; they aren't as good as Connor Bedard's. And he's turned out to be one of the best players in the entire league for the last 8-9 years. So I think the future is extremely bright, even though it's been a little frustrating for Connor Bedard over the course of the last couple of seasons. But that's to be expected when you're rebuilding.
Hey, Rick, Seth Jones, the trade, he obviously wanted out. And then the captain, Nick Foligno, comes out and says, "Hey, we got rid of some of our distractions." What'd you think of that comment?
Yeah, I think it was pretty pointed. And these guys go back, too. They played with each other in Columbus, so it wasn't like they were, they didn't know each other. I think they're probably actually pretty friendly. I don't think Seth Jones was a bad guy. I mean, I got to talk to him quite a bit over the course of the season. He always seemed like a real nice person. But, when a guy's frustrated, and especially somebody who's got a profile like he does and was the highest paid player on the team and had been here for a while. He came in under different circumstances. He thought the team would be headed in a different direction more quickly. I think he could see his career. He's 30 years old now, where he was, and I think he was just frustrated. I get the sense, though, especially after the comments by Foligno, they weren't very happy that he went public with his frustrations, right? So, and to turn that trade into what they got out of Florida. I mean, basically, I think Jones gave them a list of 2 teams he wanted to go to, Dallas and Florida. The Stars couldn't get it done, so it was down to one team. To get a 23-year-old former first-round draft pick goaltender in Spencer Knight and a first-round pick out of the Panthers for Seth Jones, when many people thought that contract was unmovable, that's a remarkable bit of work by Kyle Davidson and the entire management staff with the Blackhawks. So, I think they made a really they made a great deal in a tough situation. Was he an overt distraction? Probably not, but when it was clear that he didn't want to be there, I think it was best to move on as quickly as possible, which they did. And to turn it into something in terms of a pick and a goalie was a pretty impressive trade. So, onward and upward, and a chance now for some of these young guys to step in and take on a bigger role. We've seen Artem Levshunov, the second overall pick last season, play the last 2 games. I think he's looked really good. So, that kid can, if he turns into something, and you think about guys like Vlasic, they've got Ethan Del Mastro playing right now, Wyatt Kaiser, all these young defensemen, guys who have played as well. Louis Previer's not in the lineup right now. He's 22 years old. Nolan Allen is 21. He's back in Rockford. I'm just trying to look at my roster here right now. Sam Renzel is at the University of Minnesota. He might wind up being the best of the bunch in terms of the young defensemen. So, it's at some point you've got to cut bait with a guy who doesn't want to be here and stick with the plan, and that's get the young guys in the lineup.
Well, let's talk about the plan. When is this team going to turn the corner? They signed some free agents last July 1st, but here we are today, and they're still in 31st place. When do you see that turning of the corner in Chicago?
Well, Rick, they're going to have to bolster the roster with some more veteran guys, I think, this offseason. But guys who are going to be here for a while. They went out and signed a bunch of veterans, guys who won, to short-term contracts. I think they have to be a big player. You go after a guy like Mitch Marner, and offer him a 7-year deal. Somebody who can be with the team and be part of the rebuild. The issue when you sign a bunch of older players to 1-year deals, when the season doesn't go well, is they're not invested in the future, right? Not that they're a distraction or doing anything wrong, but they're not really part of the plan. They're just here to try and help this year, and this year hasn't gone that great. So I think the play has to be in the summer to try and get some guys to help Connor Bedard in terms of offense. This team needs to score a little bit more. They have been lately, but I think they need to be a more consistent offensive producer. because the future on the back end and the goaltending, I think, is very good. If they can surround Bedard with some more players who have some experience at the NHL level, proven scores through free agency, I would do it. But it's got to be guys that you've committed to for more than just a year or two. And I get the sense that's the plan, if they can convince some of those big free agents to come. And then that'll help them get better a little more quickly than waiting for these players to develop. It's not guaranteed that it's going to work when you have a bunch of prospects with high upside. There's plenty of examples where teams get stuck in that mode for a while. And, look at Buffalo, right? But I think the Hawks are on a much better trajectory. They have too many good pieces, and they've got a cornerstone superstar in Connor Bedard. How long it takes, your guess is as good as mine. I'd be a lot richer guy if I could make those kind of predictions.
Well, we're asking those questions of the Canucks, too. Hey, Rick, before I let you go, what's the latest with Jonathan Taves? And I don't know how much you would know about this and a possible comeback.
Just the stories I've heard and talking to people, around the Hawks who know him well. He wants to come back. It won't be in Chicago, though, and I think that's, Taves has said as much. I'm sure there was probably a call or two made, but there, and I get it from the Hawks' perspective. Even though he's a legend and was a captain of those dynasty years, at some point you have to move forward. So, but he wants to play. It wouldn't surprise me, and this is strictly speculation, but if he gets a look-see with the Winnipeg Jets next season, it's his
Winnipeg.
hometown. Yeah, he's a Winnipeg guy. So just trying to connect the breadcrumbs here. If I had to make a prediction, I think that's a pretty good one. But he certainly seems interested. His health is good. He had long-term COVID and a bunch of other issues with the autoimmune disorders. I know it was a struggle for him from everything I've heard. So it's great to hear he's doing well. That's the best news of all. And, if he could turn that into a return to the NHL, I think that'll be a pretty cool story.
Yeah, 36, hasn't played the last couple of seasons. Always great to talk to you, buddy. Thanks so much. Enjoy Vancouver.
Yeah, it's sunny out. I'm going to go for a walk. I thought it was supposed to be raining. I'm going to go to Stanley Park and
Seawall.
Yeah. Yes.
Thanks, Rick.
Okay, boys. Take care.